Like I said earlier, they actually had odds that, she was like third or fourth in the betting odds to be MVP of the WNBA. That's such a slap in the face to every WNBA player. It's unbelievable, right?
Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it moves in silence. One choice, one sentence, and everything changes. For Caitlin Clark, payback didn't come through angry posts or heated comebacks. Her revenge was far more powerful. She simply said no. No to Geno Auriemma. No to UConn's tradition. No to the $1 million deal that was offered to her years after they once ignored her. From the outside, it seemed unbelievable. Who turns down more than $1 million for only 8 weeks of basketball? But this was never just about money. It was about pride, respect, and remembering how she was once overlooked and underestimated. By rejecting the offer, she didn't just decline a contract. She reminded a powerful man that even legends.
That's the worst part about new fans. They have no perspective. There's no context. So they just say ridiculous nonsense.
It was never only about scoring titles, highlight passes, or championship rings. It was about influence. 4 years, Geno Auriemma stood as the ultimate authority in women's basketball. The man who chose, who became a star, who earned attention, and who quietly disappeared from the scene. Then Caitlin Clark changed everything. She didn't wait for his blessing, his system, or his platform. She created her own path and built her own legacy. And when he eventually tried to connect with her, she declined with calm confidence that clearly said, "I don't need you. You need me." Every great comeback story begins with a misstep. This one wasn't a missed shot or a poor strategy. It was pride. Overwhelming, undeniable pride. Long before Clark became the biggest name in the game, before packed stadiums and record-breaking television audiences, she was simply a young girl chasing a dream. She admitted it without hesitation. UConn was once her biggest inspiration, the place she admired most in the world. But admiration turned into determination. Instead of following the old path, she carved out a new one. And in doing so, she shifted the balance of power in a sport that...
What does bother me is some of the people I deeply respect, their basketball credentials, their basketball history, their commitment to basketball and women's basketball, I think have really not covered themselves in glory with some of this commentary.
The dynasty, the powerhouse, the sanctuary of Taurasi, Moore, Stewart, the summit of women's basketball. For a young girl, raised in Iowa, nothing stood above it. And when recruiting season arrived, the destination felt predetermined. The most exciting talent of her era, joining forces with the most legendary recruiter the sport had ever seen. But that call never arrived. Geno never reached out, never phoned Clark, never contacted her family, barely even passed a word through her AAU coach. From the greatest recruiter in history, that silence spoke volumes. And it wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. The message was unmistakable. She simply wasn't a priority. His reasoning: UConn had already secured Paige Buchers and didn't need another point guard. On the surface, it sounded reasonable. But what followed felt like a slap in the face. Geno claimed that if Clark truly wanted UConn, she should have been the one to call him. Let that sink in. The coach who built an empire by recognizing generational players before anyone else, decided Caitlin Clark wasn't worth pursuing, then turned around and blamed a high school kid for not begging for his attention. That wasn't just a recruiting mistake.
The delusional fan base that follows her disrespected the WNBA players by saying she's going to go in that league and tear it apart.
The kind that stays with you forever. In response, Clark calmly stored it in her mind. If Geno wasn't willing to trust in her, she would find a place that would. So, she picked Iowa, a school without UConn's championships, prestige, or legendary aura. To outsiders, it seemed like settling for less. But to Clark, it felt like freedom. At Iowa, she wasn't standing behind Paige. She wasn't just another name on Geno's list. She was the future of the team, the player everything would revolve around. And from the moment she stepped onto the court in Iowa City, she changed the entire narrative. Her deep three-pointers weren't just baskets. They were declarations. The packed stadiums weren't just fans. They were evidence. The shattered records and skyrocketing ratings weren't accidents. They were proof of greatness. Every point, every viral moment, every milestone screamed the same message: you overlooked this. All the while, Geno refused to back down. Instead of showing respect, he chose pride. He dismissed her with smug comments, calling her just another kid shooting in the driveway. Rather than recognizing a once-in-a-lifetime talent, he tried to reduce her impact to something common. But common doesn't fill Madison Square Garden. Common doesn't pull the WNBA into global attention. Common doesn't change.
On the wrong team, she's got the wrong skill set to handle the physicality of that league, and she's a rookie.
And that is where the irony cuts the deepest. Geno shut the door the moment Caitlin Clark came knocking. He assumed she would disappear like so many other talented players before her. Instead, she went on to create the largest legacy women's basketball has ever known, completely without his help. And when he eventually tried to come back around, offering opportunity and praise, Clark didn't lash out. She didn't boast. She calmly declined. And that single response hurt him more than any defeat on the court ever could. Geno Auriemma could never resist the temptation. Whenever Caitlin Clark was mentioned, he found a way to pull Paige Buchers into the conversation. The Clark was bold, then Paige was just as bold. The Clark was winning over crowds. Paige had done the same. It wasn't coincidence. It was calculated. By linking Clark's success to his own stars, Geno kept his name at the center of attention. He wanted everyone to think her achievements were nothing special, nothing outside the system he created. But subtle jabs don't stay subtle for long, and people caught on, fans caught on, analysts caught on, and even
the delusional fan base that follows her disrespected the WNBA players by saying she's going to go in that league and tear it apart. There were actually odds on she's third or fourth in betting odds on being MVP at the WNBA. These people are so disrespectful and so unknowledgeable and so stupid that it gives women's basketball a bad name. Okay, so the kid was set up for failure right from the beginning.
people quickly recognized the truth behind the performance. Clark's talent spoke for itself without any extra praise. She was attracting larger audiences than many pro teams, shattering long-standing records, and completely changing how women's basketball was discussed. Meanwhile, Geno continued to smile in front of the cameras, quietly trying to hold on to his fading dominance. Beneath the friendly image was clear unease, the kind that appears when attention starts shifting elsewhere and you realize you can't control it. In time, the facade began to crack. The subtle remarks were no longer enough. Geno shifted from quietly downplaying Clark to openly criticizing those who admired her. For a long period, his approach had been hidden jabs dressed up as analysis. But in June 2024, during a conversation on The Dan Patrick Show, he stepped over a boundary he could never erase. The legendary coach, expected to be a symbol of the sport, didn't just challenge Caitlin Clark. He targeted her followers. He labeled her fans as unrealistic. He accused them of lacking real knowledge of basketball. And then, shockingly, he went even further, claiming their support was so misguided that it was actually hurting.
Now, there's a lot of investors in this league. One investor, been trying to keep quiet about, his investment in the league ever since his comments that he made about a young rookie. Pretty much, had him in the headlines for about a month and a half. That is Geno Auriemma, dog. I'm here to tell you, he's part owner of this league.
What offense had they actually committed? Simply believing that Clark, as a rookie, had the talent to finish among the top 4 in MVP voting. To Geno, that belief wasn't enthusiasm. It was ignorance. Diana put it bluntly, saying this kid was headed for a harsh reality check. Pause and think about that. Millions of fresh viewers had just been drawn into women's basketball because of Clark. Parents were buying tickets, children were wearing her jerseys, and new fans were finally paying attention to WNBA games. For the first time in years, the sport was gaining real momentum. Yet Geno's reaction wasn't appreciation or excitement. It was mockery. Instead of embracing the surge of interest, he ridiculed it. This wasn't thoughtful evaluation or constructive criticism. It felt personal. Came across as an attack on the very supporters who helped push Clark into the spotlight. Geno wasn't only questioning Clark's potential. He was brushing aside the fans who fueled her success. And because he is Geno Auriemma, his opinions carried serious influence. That influence made his comments even more harmful and more telling. By labeling her supporters foolish, he wasn't just doubting them. He was doubting her. He was implying the excitement was temporary and that her...
They've tried to do everything they could to make the most of the situation. They tried to make the most of Caitlin Clark not playing by hinting everything and basically making people think that Caitlin Clark was going to play.
In the end, he was convinced he would be proven correct. But this is where the story takes a satisfying twist. Geno wasn't right at all. In fact, he wasn't even close. Clark didn't fire back on social media. She didn't avoid interviews. She didn't have to. Her answer came in the only place that truly counted. The basketball court, and what happened next wasn't just redemption. It was a complete breakdown of Geno's credibility. Caitlin Clark stepped forward and claimed Rookie of the Year honors. And she didn't stop there. She earned a spot on the All-WNBA first team. Then, when the MVP voting results came in, she finished exactly fourth, right where her so-called unrealistic fans said she would. The prediction Geno mocked turned into fact. And with that, his reputation took a major hit. It wasn't only a victory for Clark. It was proof for her supporters, the ones he ridiculed and dismissed, every parent who took their child to watch her, and every
on the NBA side, and you're going to see it on this side, where you look superhuman playing against 18-year-olds, but you're going to come with some grown women that have been playing professional basketball for a long time.
Every fresh supporter who bought into the excitement was written off by Geno as irrelevant. Clark went on to prove those believers were right all along. And the best part was how she did it, without uttering a single word. No speeches, no arguments, no theatrics, just dominance. Game after game, she produced moments that spoke for themselves. Deep threes from the logo, moves that left defenders stuck in place, passes that turned into instant highlights. When the honors finally arrived, there was nothing left to question. She had answered every critic through her play alone. There's a certain poetry in that. Geno had long carried himself as the ultimate authority on women's basketball, the seasoned voice who supposedly knew more than fans, analysts, and players alike. Yet it turned out the fans saw it clearly. Clark was everything they believed she was, and Geno was simply wrong. Every packed arena, every broken record, every new milestone was proof that his era of influence was fading. She never needed his blessing. She never asked for it. And the irony was impossible to miss. Clark wasn't trying to embarrass Geno. She wasn't chasing validation from him. She was just doing what she always had, being Caitlin Clark. And that alone was enough to expose how out of touch he had become. By the end of her rookie season, the conversation wasn't about whether she could meet expectations. It was about how thoroughly she had crushed them. Geno's early remarks looked worse with time, like predictions that aged horribly. His dismissive attitude toward her supporters now sounded like some of the most misguided commentary in recent sports memory, petty, defensive, and painfully off-target. But letting go was never his strength. Admitting he misjudged her seemed impossible. And by that stage, it was bigger than basketball. Clark symbolized a new era, a shift he could no longer control, the reality that the sport had moved beyond him. Rather than accept that, he did what he always does, kept talking. Interview after interview, show after show, he continued circling her name. The routine became familiar. A bit of praise followed by a subtle jab, compliments softened by excuses. Yet the more he spoke, the clearer it became. Caitlin Clark wasn't just dominating on the court. She was permanently on his mind. Eventually, words weren't enough. After months of trying to steer the conversation with comparisons and backhanded remarks, Geno realized his voice wasn't carrying the weight it once did. Clark kept rising, and his grip kept loosening. So he changed tactics. If he couldn't shape the story through commentary, maybe he could influence it with money. That's when the $1 million proposal surfaced. By that point, he had already tried ignoring her, downplaying her success, questioning her popularity, and tying her achievements to UConn's legacy. None of it slowed her down. Clark continued to soar, and Geno continued to slip.